All right, welcome Mike Brcic to the show from Wayfinders. Got a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. You got a lot of background in entrepreneurship, extensive success in the business world. So, looking forward to talking about all that. Take us back and tell us what your background is and where you're coming from.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Excited to be here, by the way. I love what you're doing, and I think it's fantastic. I guess my entrepreneurial journey started many years ago. I'm now 52. Um, Started when I was 23, I guess, 2004, I want to say, or maybe it was 2005. Geez, it's been a while. Um, I graduated university and then moved out to a little ski town in the Canadian Rockies. I didn't want to work in my university field, so I thought I'll just become a ski bum for a year, and then I'll figure it out. And I probably got fired from my first three jobs, and that was the after that third one, that was kind of the moment. It was like, geez, I'm a terrible employee, and I'm in this tiny little town of 6,000 people, and I think my reputation's pretty pretty low right now, and I don't know who's going to hire me. And maybe doing my own thing is the path for me. So I really, at the time, I was really into mountain biking. And this town I lived in, beautiful, Rockies mountain town, beautiful mountains, tons of trails everywhere, but
Mhm.
um, pretty hard to find all these trails, and there was more and more tourists coming in. So I started a business. Just the idea was just take people, guide them out on day trips on the local trails. um, that it was slow to take off. It wasn't until, and I had a partner when we started out. It took until our third year to really get some traction. That was when we started doing week-long overnight trips. Long story short, I ended up growing that business over the course of 24 years, I think it was.
Oh, good.
I sold it in February 2019. At the time, we were in 45 countries around the world. I had a team of 50, 60 people working. We kind of had eked out this position at the top of the market, the most respected company in the industry, and it was a great ride, to use the pun. But
Yeah, and
and
that was an overnight. What was it? Overnight ski?
mountain bike trips,
Oh,
mountain bike
mountain
trips.
bike trips. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I was thinking
So
cross country skiing, but so uh, mostly during the summer months, or were you doing stuff in the winter
well,
too?
we were all over the world. So in the winter months, we had trips in New Zealand, we had trips in Chile,
Oh wow.
you name it. We were busy year round, and yeah, around 2014, 2015, I kind of took a good thing, and I messed with it, and it was kind of this nice lifestyle business, and I was still getting out, and I was traveling internationally with my bike and exploring all these regions, and then I decided that's not enough, and I want to throw some fuel on the fire and really grow this thing. And
Mhm.
that's when I started raising money from investors and really expanding the team, and expanding to all kinds of new countries and stuff like that. And then within the span of a few years, I took this nice lifestyle business and turned it into this big complex juggernaut. And I spent most of my time writing shareholder reports and managing a big staff team, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember one day waking up and like thinking, I haven't been on my mountain bike in 8 months or something like that.
Oh,
And uh and this isn't why I started the company. And that was part of the beginning of the end for me, from when I decided to sell the business. But
yeah.
I learned so much in the process. So
Yeah, no kidding. So that's kind of an interesting way you put it. I had this great thing going and I messed with it, tried to turn it corporate or bring in investors, that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, big lesson there. Yeah, a lot of people they start off their business by raising money. They start out that way because
yeah,
some businesses require a lot of capital in the beginning. There's no way to get into it without it.
yeah. Well, I think when I look back at those years, the big takeaway for me, or the big lesson for me, was I'd never really taken the time to understand why I wanted to scale the business. And back in 2016, I had set this, to use the common language, BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, that we wanted to be in 150 countries by 2021. So this was our 5-year plan. And that was very aggressive and very ambitious.
Yeah.
And, but I'd never actually paused to ask myself, like, why is that important to me? And it wasn't until later on when things got really stressful, really unenjoyable, um, that I started questioning that, and I realized a lot of that was just this quest for validation. You know, whether it was from my entrepreneurial peers or whether it was from the industry or whatever, and probably, you know, some sense of validation that I maybe never got, you know, as a child or whatever, to do all the psychological unpacking of it. But it it made me realize that, and now with my current business, I'm extremely intentional with what I do, how I do it. I basically started with the end in mind, and I said, what kind of business do I want to run? What kind of lifestyle do I want? And how can I create a business around that? And it's so easy to get locked into that kind of hamster wheel. And that's the message we all get in the world of entrepreneurship, right? That's what you do as an entrepreneur. You just scale, scale, scale,
Yep.
and you just grow, grow, grow. And I don't have anything against scale, but I think it's important to understand the reasons why we do it. And if we're doing it to stroke our own ego, or if we need validation, I can tell you there's no number you're going to hit, and there's no size of company you're going to hit that's actually going to feed that thing. Because I know people running $100 million companies, and you know, they get to 1 million, and it's like the next goal is 10 million. They get to 10 million, they're not satisfied. I got to get to 100 million. And if you're running $100 million company, and you've got thousands of staff, at that point, like, if you haven't gotten the what you need out of it, you're probably not going to get it at, you know, 1 billion or 10 billion or whatever. And it's time to ask, like, what is it that I really want?
Right.
And so I try to start with the end in mind, and it requires you to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, you know, for a lot of military folks coming out of the military, you know, some of us have an idea for a business and they want to run with it. Some of us just know we don't want to work in the corporate America cube farm, and business ownership seems like the next best alternative to doing that. But you know, sometimes not having an idea for a business can be beneficial because you're open to new ideas. You can go work at a startup to get experience there, whatever it may be. And you know, sometimes having an idea, especially if it's a flawed idea, uh,
Yeah.
can be can be can be it can be a double-edged sword because you're sold on your idea. Nobody can convince you otherwise, and it's something that's really, you know, probably not going to work, and there's no market for it, whatever it may be.
I think ideas can be really can be a real problem, right? Because
Uh-huh.
I used to run entrepreneurship boot camps for startup entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
they'd all come in with these ideas, and it would take me a while to get through to them. Like, the world doesn't give a rat's ass about your idea. What people care about is that their problems are solved, and that's why they
Yeah.
buy products and services, to solve problems. And so, you know, people need to let go of their ideas. The idea may be a great idea because it's actually in response to a need that they see, but you need to focus on, you know, who's the customer, what's the need I'm solving. And for
Yeah.
me, with my current business, it was solving my own need, which was my own need for, you know, strong connections with other entrepreneurs. But
Uh-huh.
I knew that there was a lot of need out there as well. And so it wasn't about the idea; it was about, how do I create something that serves this particular need.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. Be right back. All right, back talking with Mike Brcic from Wayfinders. So last couple of years of the mountain biking company, covered a little bit about what's going on with that. Some overlap there. You came up with the idea for Wayfinders. So what was the inspiration and motivation behind the concept of Wayfinders?
Yeah, so those last few years of the mountain bike company, like I said, I'd grown it quite a bit, and it had become a big, complex business, far beyond, you know, what it had been a few years before. And I was encountering all kinds of problems that I'd never encountered before. And so I decided to get my head out of my ass and get over my own hubris that I knew everything there was to know about entrepreneurship, and developed a little bit of humility and started, you know, reaching out to some mentors. I joined some entrepreneur groups like
Mhm.
EO, and I started attending these different entrepreneur events, and just to kind of up my game a little bit and surround myself with other people. And what I saw was a lot of these events were pretty similar, where it was really about a lot of information being dumped at you. So there'd be speakers and there'd be workshops and then another speaker and another workshop, a networking break in the hallway, another speaker. And that was all really good. But the value that I got was the connections that I made with the other people, but the format was lousy for that. And so I wanted to create something where the starting point was connection. It's about connecting entrepreneurs and helping them build, ideally lifelong friendships. And I knew, from running the previous company, when you take people outside and you are doing challenging things together and having fun outside and pushing yourselves, that people tend to bond, right? And the military is probably an extreme example of that, right? And when you're, I know some veterans, when you're in combat and going through stuff like that together, it brings you, you're really relying on each other and it brings you together tightly.
Right.
And so I wanted to create something with that goal in mind. So my first event was I sent out an invite to a bunch of people I knew and said, hey, I want to put together something in the Canadian Rockies. It's all entrepreneurs. We're going to go mountain biking. We're going to do some hiking. We're going to do some rafting. We'll do some talks and workshops as well. But the focus is on having fun and connecting. And so people responded really well to that. The first event sold out. People asked me to do more of them. And then I started doing them, farther flung locations. So, events in Greenland, in the Amazon jungle, in the jungles of Africa, all over the place. And so it's been, it's been an amazing journey since then.
Yeah. So it's Wayfinders is getting entrepreneurs out there, team building, not only self-reliance, but relying on groups and just those type of extreme type trips in very unique, cool places.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I've really worked hard over the last few years to develop my skills as a facilitator, and I've done a lot of different trainings, and I'm trying to create a meaningful, both personal and community journey for the people who join. Mm-hmm. And so I create, there's lots of exercises we do, and I create lots of opportunities for reflection and, dialogue in small groups and stuff like that. And for a lot of these entrepreneurs, they're pretty driven, and a lot of their lives are just like go, 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 go. And they don't often take the time to pause and say, hey, like, if I'm climbing the ladder of success, am I leaning on the right house here? Like, what am I doing? And sometimes, a lot of these people, they put so much focus on their business that other aspects of their lives have really suffered in the process. So these events are kind of an opportunity to just like reset and go like far, far away from your typical environment.
Yeah.
And just like pause, reflect, do some fun, cool shit together, and create some really tight bonds with other people who are going through the same thing.
And this is definitely primarily for entrepreneurs to get together with other entrepreneurs, not like a corporate team building where everybody from the same company comes on one of these events.
Yeah, it's all people who own their own companies.
Yeah, and it's unique and very beneficial because entrepreneurship can be very lonely. Mm-hmm. If you're the entrepreneur and you're running the company, whether you got 5 employees or 50 or 100, you're the driving force behind everything, and the visionary. And if you have a lot of employees surrounding you with employee type mindsets, which you need those, of course, the concept of entrepreneurship and the way you look at things, it can be very lonely, and it's hard to find other entrepreneurs you can collaborate with or even consult with or confide in.
Yeah, 100%. And, a lot of when I get people who come to my events who've never really kind of plugged into other entrepreneur communities or whatever, they say it's like, wow, this is an incredible breath of fresh air. Like, people understand me, and they might not have anybody in their friends who are just working regular jobs or whatever. They're not up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about how to make payroll next week, or all these problems. Like, they clock in and clock out. And so people will come to me and say like, wow, like it's so awesome to be around people who understand what I'm going through, and we share the same struggles and we can talk about them. So that's a big part of the value, is just being around your peers.
So can you talk in the very beginning of Wayfinders how you took it from a concept to reality and put it into action? Maybe the first meeting or the first trip. How did that work?
Yeah, well, like I said, I was already part of a few entrepreneur communities, and so I had a pretty big network to reach out to. And then I also also had a reputation. You know, people knew that I was in the adventure travel industry, and they knew I was a pretty big adventure kind of guy, and that I had some business acumen and knew what I was doing. And so I put together kind of the bare bones of this idea and said, hey, it's going to be 5 days. We'll be in the Rockies, you know, having fun, and some content and workshops and stuff like that as well. And so all I did was just send out some invites to people in my network, and it resonated. And it was kind of amazing because the website, I put it up. I spent a weekend putting together the website, just a Squarespace website.
Mm-hmm.
Started sending out invites the next week. By the end of that week, I probably had half of those spots filled. And this was, you know, not a cheap event. It was like in the order of $5 or $6 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the quickest. And I've had like other little mini businesses and ideas and stuff along the way, but this was the quickest from, you know, concept to execution and validation I'd ever seen. So that was pretty exciting to get the idea validated.
Yeah, no kidding. And you're already doing extreme type mountain bike trips all over the world, or organizing them. So similar concept, but the focus was not mountain biking. The focus was connection and community and people. So you had to tweak that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a huge stretch, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I knew the mountain biking part was a little bit of a hurdle, because not everybody's into mountain biking, right? And so the events that I run now, there might be half a day of mountain biking, or it might be optional if people want to do it. Or most of the time, I tend to favor activities where people can still talk and connect. And so we do a lot of hiking and trekking and stuff like that, or whitewater rafting, whatnot. But yeah, it was yeah, you know, looking back, it was quite it's quite the journey from there to here, to go from just kind of an idea to, you know, my events now often sell out like a year and a half in advance, because I've developed a reputation now. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
You have a lot of repeat customers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to Mongolia in October, and there's 30 of us going, and only 2 of those are new customers. The other 28 are
Sounds good
repeats.
there too, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Man. So what's it like, you know, organizing and conducting a trip like that with entrepreneurial minded people?
Well, it's interesting. You know, all those people are used to running their own companies, right? And so they're used to being in control. One of the things I do on my events is I keep the itinerary almost a complete secret. So if I say, you know, like I just got back a couple of weeks ago from Uganda, and say, hey, we're going to the jungles of Uganda, you know, and I, I tell them we're going to see the mountain gorillas, because that's kind of a big drawing card. But other than that, they have no idea. And you know, they get a detailed prep list and a detailed packing list. You know, this is everything that you should bring, but they have no idea what's going to be happening on any given day. And so, you know, what I do is the night before, I put up a list, say, this is what you need to wear tomorrow, this is what you need to bring, and the rest of it's going to be a big old mystery. And so that's and I do that for a couple of reasons. One, because I really believe in surprises. When, you know, when people, if I tell somebody about an experience we're going to have, they're going to form a mental picture of it. And whether that
Yeah.
experience is good or bad, if it doesn't match up to their mental picture, there might be some disappointment. The other is that entrepreneurs are, like I said, they like to control everything. They're used to like making their own reality, right?
Uh-huh.
And and um, and sometimes in life we need to release that sense of needing to control everything. And that in itself, and I've heard time and time again from the people that come, is a really valuable thing for them to learn and to let go of. And there's this one guy. I remember we were in Greenland a couple of years ago, and he kept coming up to me. He's like, I gotta know what we're doing today. Like, I need to make plans and I need to do all this stuff. Like, you gotta tell me what we're doing. It's driving me crazy. And I just resisted him, and he kept at it. And then by day 4, he came to me. He's like, wow, I just want to thank you. I had a big epiphany last night, and I just realized, you know, how much of my life is spent trying to control everything around me, and how stressful that is, because I can't control everything. And I just had this big release, and I'm totally ready to just submit to whatever you have in store for us. And
Mhm.
so anyways, it's kind of like a tug of war sometimes, you know, with all these type A's and whatnot. But I also try and create an environment where it's just really open and people can be themselves and vulnerable, and they can, all the responsibilities and stuff they have at home, they can leave that behind, and we can just connect as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was what I was really curious about. So yeah, entrepreneurs are definitely used to controlling the situation all the time, and just that natural personality. I mean, some people are just that way. I mean, we'll go out boating and stuff, and we get people in the boat trying to tell me how to run the boat, and
Yeah.
they're not even the ones driving the boat. It's like, well, and I, I think that's that sometimes that comes naturally with some people. They feel they have to be in control. I think that's one thing in the military people get used to is we always say that in order to be a good leader someday, you have to learn how to be a good follower. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody has to know their role. Stay in your lane, know your role. If you get to practice being a good follower first, then you can become a leader. Oftentimes, you don't understand how to be a good leader until you've been in charge once and seen what a problem it is to get people to follow or
Yeah.
keep people
Yeah.
in the lane. So in the military, you get to practice both sides of that all the time.
Yeah.
You work your way up one ladder and you get to the top, and then you get promoted or you change jobs or units, and boom, you go back to the bottom. And so you're constantly leader follower all the way up throughout your career. So you get used to playing those different roles and being in your place. And sometimes when you find yourself being back to being a snuffy, somebody else is in charge. You learn how to support them and go along with what the leadership's telling you to do, because that's ultimately the best for the group or the unit or the mission.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, what else can you tell us about Wayfinders? Like, what are some of the things you're finding that come out of this? The benefits, like when people go back to running their businesses after one of your events, what's some of the feedback you get when they return to normalcy?
Well, one of the biggest things that I'm trying to achieve, or biggest outcomes I'm trying to help them create, is clarity, and create a context for them, whether that's through a journaling exercise that we do, or whether it's through a group dialogue exercise or something else. I'm not averse to just dumping people on their own in the jungle, and just we'll come back for you in 3 hours and
Yeah.
see what happens. But I'm trying to help people tap into their inner wisdom, and I come at it from a default of we already have the internal resources, the wisdom to answer our biggest questions and our biggest challenges. It's just that we don't trust it, or we don't know how to access it. And so a lot of my work is trying to get people to tap into that and get through some of the biggest struggles that they've been having. And usually it's because they've been kind of trying to solve the whole thing up here, right in their head. They're trying to intellectually grind their way through a problem. And sometimes you have to just like drop into your body or drop into your heart and just like really feel into it. Whether that's an issue with your business, or an issue with your relationship with your partner, or the path you're on in life, or whatever. Those are hard issues to just think your way through. And so I take people through a process of like accessing different sources of wisdom to be able to get that clarity. And then the follow-up to that is giving people this support and the accountability when they get home, so that they can follow through on that. Because sometimes that clarity comes, and it's the follow through is really difficult,
Yeah.
right? And then you get back home, and then fear takes over, or ego takes over, or whatever, and you don't do anything with it, right? And so at my events, I break people up into smaller groups, typically 3 or 4, and a lot of our exercises will take place in those groups, and then encourage people to stay in touch with their group, and I give them certain action things towards the end of the event that they can take home, and then use their small group for accountability, for support, to keep moving on those things when they get back home. And it's not necessarily just like big things. It could be one small thing that they haven't taken action on, in months or years, something like that. But there's just a lot of power in the group, whether it's the whole group or whether it's the small group, there's something amazing that comes through that power, excuse me, that power of the collective. And so I try to harness that as much as I can. And also encourage people to to bring that into their lives back home. And it doesn't just have to be with the other people there, but I talk a lot about like how I'm very intentional about my network, about the people I spend time with, about, my relationships, my connection. That's probably my biggest focus in life, is just being very intentional about my relationships and my network, and staying in touch with the people I want to stay in touch with.
Wow. Um, what kind of data can you share with us? Like, how many trips you guys Wayfinders has done, and total number of people that have gone on those trips over the last few years. Can you share any of that info?
Sure. Yeah. My first trip was September 2017.
Uh-huh.
And so I've done 2 a year since then. I mean, COVID was obviously a little bit of an interruption, but I ended up just postponing those trips. So
Yeah.
last November 2022, I actually just finished a run of 5 events in 13 months, but it's 2 a year. So I don't know what the math is on that. Sounds like probably around 10 events
Yeah.
that I've done, usually around 20 to 25 people per event.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know the total number of people, because there's a lot of repeats in there. So it's a pretty tight, small community.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, because when I talked in the beginning about being very intentional about the type of business that I wanted to run, and the type of life that I wanted to have around it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of reverse engineered it. And I started with a premise of I want to earn a good living for my family. I don't want to work too hard, 20 to 30 hours a week max. And I don't want any staff, because I didn't like, I had a big staff team with my previous business. So I didn't like that. And I kind of broke that rule by hiring a full-time VA a couple of months ago, but that's been a big help. So yeah, I earn a very nice living just running 2 events a year. Typically don't work more than 15, 20 hours a week if I have to. And I put the vast majority of my time into providing value for my customers.
That's
And
awesome.
so, and I really don't do any marketing as a result, because
Oh.
I get high repeat numbers, and I get high referral numbers. And back when I used to run those entrepreneur boot camps, people would come in, they'd always want to talk about marketing. And I'd say, let's not talk about marketing yet. Let's talk about the customer. Let's talk about their need. Let's talk about how you're going to solve that.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about how you're going to do that better than anybody else. Because if you can do that, your need for marketing goes way down. But if you are not delivering an amazing service, then you just have to spend more and more money on marketing to overcome the fact that people don't want to keep doing business with you, right? And so for me, marketing is just keep putting time into providing value for people, and then they do the marketing for you.
Wow.
And so
Great
that's
concept. Yeah.
like I just announced my 2024 events last month, and I think I have 2 spots left, and that's sold out to the end of 2024. And that's just because I put time into providing value for people. And when I come at it from that perspective, rather than how can I make lots of money for myself or whatever, I end up doing pretty well in the process.
That's awesome. You plan on scaling that?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I have up until now resisted that call, because again, I've got a good thing going. Why mess with it like I did with my last business?
Right.
And I also have 3 kids. I have 2 12-year-olds and a 15-year-old. And so, my time is limited with them around the house. So I want to make sure I'm available for them.
Right.
The big project, actually, for the last couple of years, my wife and I have been talking a lot about this, is buying a wilderness property and building out a retreat center.
Nice.
And that would be somewhere where I could do like shorter versions, more local versions of what I do internationally, and just a place where people can come and connect and heal, and just reconnect with themselves and with others. So that's, in terms of any sort of scaling, that's probably where the focus is going to go, and we've got most of the capital raised for that. But down the road, as my kids are older, out of the house, I can definitely see myself running more events. I love running those events, but I don't want to be away from my family that long. So
awesome. Yep. Great philosophy, great way of looking at things. So All right, Mike, we're gonna give you the last word. Oh, I do need to ask you, where do we find Wayfinders? We want to get more info or check out one of your trips.
Sure. The website is way-finders.com,
Uh-huh.
way-finders.com. And that's where you'll find all the info you need.
Awesome. So if you're talking to the military audience, veteran, somebody on the way out of the military, looking to get involved in entrepreneurship, they want to run their own business, don't really want to do the corporate America thing, the job. When it comes to entrepreneurship, what kind of advice comes to mind?
Well, I'm a little bit contrarian. Like, there's a lot of people who say, you got to burn the ships and like quit your job and just go all in.
Yeah.
And I know people who've done that, and it's really stressful. And I'm actually a big fan of the side hustle. It's like, keep that stable job going,
Mm-hmm.
carve out some time, just do it consistently, even if it's only half an hour a day or
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes a day or whatever. Like, I wrote an entire book a couple of years ago just by doing 20 minutes of writing every day for a year.
Wow.
And because I know I can't like sit down and write for 5 hours, right?
Right.
But if you've got an idea, if you see, we talked about the peril of ideas. If you see a need, if you identify a need out there, and you feel that you can develop something to serve that need, then there's nothing wrong with just having a side hustle, work on it 20 minutes a day or a couple hours a week or whatever, and just consistently, just day after day, consistently spend some time on it, and work on that. And then hopefully the time will come where, that's taken off enough, you get to the point where you can leave that job. But just leaving the job and going all in on some idea that's not tested, that's stressful, and it's hard. And there's no shame in keeping that job and just working that side hustle.
Yeah.
And but the key is just do it consistently. Just, even if it's 15 minutes a day, just set aside 15 minutes and work on that thing, find your first few customers, deliver an amazing product, and then they'll help you find the next batch of customers.
Awesome. Well, hey, Mike, thanks for sharing your entrepreneurial success stories, multiple stories in your entrepreneurial journey, and look forward to seeing the future success of Wayfinders.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you and everything you do.
Thank you. All right. We are out.